As we finish the 5th season of Outfit Wars, I want to reflect on how it got started and how the past seasons went, figuring out why things changed as they did and how we arrived at the current iteration. Also taking a look at how enjoyable this latest season was and where we could go from here. Roughly 4 years ago, there was a game in development called Planetside Arena. Okay, wait, don't leave. I'll keep it kinda short. During the development of PSA, there was mainly one person working on Planetside. That person was Rel, chugging away at the game more or less on his own. As Planetside Arena fizzled out over time, more and more resources went back into Planetside 2, and Rel got the manpower to finally realize the biggest recent update in Planetside history: Escalation. It included the addition of outfit-specific resources and tools such as anvils, orbital strikes and citadel shields to cover those, as well as the massive Bastion fleet carrier and a brand new hub in Sanctuary, some of those having their origin in Planetside Arena. The last thing Escalation included was the Outfit Wars system, a way for outfits to compete with each other, although it worked way different back then compared to now. The main focus of Season 1 was the gathering of resources by capping bases for your outfit. At the end of the season, the top 3 teams from each faction would fight each other, and that'd be it. Let's take a closer look at the point gathering system in Season 1. It was a whole 2 weeks of every single base capture counting towards your qualifying points, and held bases accumulating points over time. You can imagine it like the live gameplay before and during this Outfit War season, but non-stop and more extreme. If you were at the helm of arguably the strongest outfit of that first season like me, it was a fun and exciting time to play. You'd cap bases at any cost, be it cheese, auto-grounding, point holding, or smashing it all together at the same time. Obviously there was only one side of it. Trying to cap bases at any cost makes for pretty unfun gameplay, and people that just want to log on and play on their own would end up having a miserable time. On top of that are issues with the capture system. Capturing a base depends on how much XP is gained while attacking. And since ghost capping a base matters about as much as any other cap, players would end up padding XP with revives or resupplies. There were a few other exploits used that resulted in all scores getting reset 5 days before the end of the qualifying phase. A frustrating but ultimately correct decision that didn't have a big impact on Cobalt, but mattered on other servers. Which brings us to Desolation, a map that I still have a lot of issues with to this day, because it was just the bare minimum of anything. The landscape is barren except for a few hills and mountains, presenting a general shape for the map. But that was far from enough to make for interesting tank or air fights. The one unique thing about this map might be that it made the Harusser the strongest it has ever been competitively. The openness of the map obviously made any anti-air tool extremely strong, as cutting line of sight is much more difficult than usual, and the 9 infantry bases are all exactly the same, making for the smallest possible amount of variety. So how did things get to this point? Well, for one, the need to include construction in Outfit Wars was supposed to make up for the lack of cover or landmarks. That didn't really end up happening, as the people that would build bases in Desolation would rather do it inside the relics, where it is much safer and valuable. Also, construction built out in the open would often just get shot down right away. The second reason was the lead level designer at the time, Carto. Bless his heart, he seemed really passionate about the whole thing, but he did not have the experience with Planetside 2 specifically to create a map containing any kind of competitive aspects. Desolation lacks any kind of complex base design except for the inside of relics, which is just random objects placed in a circle around the point. And these have been copy-pasted 9 times. Like, look man, this is a cool ramp and all, but it might be the least important place on the entire map. If someone told me that no one ever jumped off that ramp during the entirety of the 3 seasons of Desolation, I would 100% believe them. But all of that gets eclipsed by the biggest problem that Desolation has. The 3-way fights. I honestly can't judge most of the level design problems of the map properly, due to the fact that whenever I played matches on Desolation, they would either be a proper stomp or I would have to manage getting double teamed. With the lattice lines connecting everywhere, you are completely doomed if 2 decently competent outfits decide that you have to lose. I'm sure I've talked about this plenty of times already, but our final match of Season 3 against Reapers and TFDN was the absolute peak of that. Me and a bunch of other people in our team spent a lot of time preparing for the match, crafting openers and squad compositions, construction setups and contingency plans. We couldn't execute any of those things due to being overpopped at every single base we would fight at, ultimately rendering all of that preparation useless. I stopped playing the game for nearly a year after that. It felt like there was no point spending time on this game just to be punished by spiteful players and badly thought out updates. A lot of these complaints did not go unnoticed, leading to Outfit Wars disappearing for a significant amount of time as Rogue Planet games rethought their approach. About 2 years later, Outfit Wars gets mentioned again. It's coming back on a new map. Well, not entirely new. The Nexus was first teased 10 years ago, but never ended up finding any use beyond a few playtests on Jaeger. With a few tweaks and additions, this map was supposed to create the foundation for the new 1v1 format. As someone who has played and led in every competitive format the game has had to offer, I'd even say it's the best out of all of them. Let me try to explain why. First of all, the map has symmetry, or as close as you can get to it. There's no need for side switching or extra rounds, it's 45 minutes of action and you're out of there. It combines every aspect of the game at roughly even significance. The way capturing a base ideally works is that you need infantry to capture a point, the infantry need a Thunderer to spawn on, the Thunderer needs tanks to defend it, and you need air to defend your tanks from getting destroyed. Obviously things can get more complicated than that, but Nexus is able to account for it. The bases are open enough that vehicles have impact by killing Thunderers or preventing infantry from getting to the point. Infantry is still able to point hold without getting ground pounded to death, but if you have no vehicle control, your chances of getting a cap through are tiny. And air is not getting locked out of playing the game by Skyguards or other anti-air, as the mountains and cliffs give you plenty of opportunities to cut line of sight. Now some people might say, lane smash can do all of that, what's the difference? The difference is that multiple lanes are being played at the same time, and the lattice lines between the 3 middle bases connect a little differently than what you might expect. These are what makes Platoon leading on Nexus so fun to me. You have more options than brute forcing yourself on one base that your enemy is desperately holding onto, making it so that aggressive plays and keeping momentum on your side is more rewarding and adds tons of complexity to the format that hasn't existed in competitive Planetside yet. That's not to say everything is perfect in Nexus. Air combat can be very stale as the warp gates still exist as safe zones, and discounts in addition to ASP make ESFs very cheap. Removing discounts from Nexus could be an easy change to introduce faster nanite drain and give more significance to vehicle fights beyond mindless spamming for map control in both ground and air. The tech plan could also be swapped out with a more unique base. It's something people have played plenty of times already, which is one of the reasons it doesn't get too much play currently. Well, we got a 1v1, we got a well-made map to play on. What's there to complain about still? Pretty much everything else. I think the tournament format itself is a good pick. Swiss system makes it so that teams can end up with even fights without seeding needed beforehand. What wasn't accounted for are repeat matches, which can suck when 3 out of the 4 games you get to play are against the same opponent. There were also a bunch of UI bugs and mechanical problems over the last 2 seasons that made for unclear scheduling, which is already hard enough with the massive size of teams needed to field one team. Which brings us to the final problem. The game is running out of players. Outfit Wars team sizes are 48 players, but to consistently bring that many people to every game, you need to account for players not being able to make a match. Most teams will end up with 80 to 100 people per team, so they can be sure to fill out their rosters every time. If we assume 12 teams per server, that could come out to around 1,000 people at least interested in playing Outfit Wars. All of that is necessary to run this tournament properly, and player numbers aren't exactly going up at this time. We saw some of the consequences of that already. Cobalt ended up without a real tournament, as players had to choose between the 2 servers. Matches happening at exactly the same time made it so players had to decide what match to play, and viewers had to decide what to watch. Matches should not be happening at the same time ever in playoffs, as there are so many free time slots to choose from. It makes the whole tournament more stressful than it needs to be. Miller still ended up being impacted though, in the form of server balance, as a lot of high-skill teams ended up on the same faction, without enough other players to balance it out. In conclusion, Outfit Wars right now is fundamentally at a really good point. Mechanical issues and bugs need to be ironed out, but after that I hope we get more seasons as soon as possible. Before Outfit Wars gets forgotten again, or worse, Planetside itself gets forgotten. I would like Outfit Wars to be not a one-off event, but a regularity that players can expect and schedule around. Maybe that'll also help with outfits cramming ops 5 days a week before Outfit Wars, or with teams rebuilding every season. I'd love to hear your take on Outfit Wars and maybe your favorite moment or favorite match of the last 2 Nexus seasons. Until then, I'll see you for the next video.